Tonight we sail. The first light of dawn spills across the waters of the Aegean, painting the harbor in soft hues of gold and rose. You stand barefoot on weathered planks, slick with dew, blinking salt from your eyes. Around you, the port of Izmir buzzes with life. Donkeys bray under their burdens of spices. Stevedores shout in 4 different dialects, and gulls wheel overhead like white scraps of torn paper. A boy runs past, clutching a warm flatbread smeared with pomegranate molasses. You briefly consider stealing it. Tonight, we're boarding an Ottoman merchant vessel bound for Alexandria. She's a stout, 2-masted galleon named Al-Rihla, or the Journey. You don't know much about sailing, but you do know this. The sails are patched, the hull leaks slightly, on purpose, they assure you, and the crew look like they've each lived 7 lives, none of them gentle. The ship rocks gently at her moorings. You step aboard with your meager bundle, a spare tunic, a carved wooden spoon, and a lucky chicken bone. The moment your foot touches the deck, the world shifts beneath you, like you've stepped onto something alive. You swallow hard, too late to back out now. A wiry deckhand waves you forward, eyes narrowed against the sun. He jerks his chin toward a coil of rope thicker than your arm. You start coiling because no one says hello here. They just see if you're useful. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments below. It's always amazing to see where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The harbor slowly recedes behind you. As Al-Rihla glides from shore, gulls cry and the anchor clatters upward. You're surprised at how fast the city fades. In a few minutes, all that's left is a jagged coastline and a memory of warm stone. You try to breathe normally, though your heart beats too fast. You catch glimpses of your crewmates, a Moroccan with tattoos up his neck, a one-eyed Greek who sings sea shanties to himself, and a silent man everyone calls the jeweler, though no one's ever seen him sell anything. Your captain, called Reis, is a broad man with a magnificent beard and a permanent squint. He stalks the deck like a hawk judging fledglings. When he shouts, the crew jumps. When he smiles, which he does once and only briefly, it's like the sky clearing. You instantly want to earn that smile again. The wind stiffens. Sails unfurl with a sound like thunder rolling across linen. You glance upward, mesmerized. There's a moment, just one, where you feel the pull of the horizon more than the weight of fear. That's when someone mutters beside you, "Don't get too comfortable." First-timers usually vomit before sundown. He's not wrong. By midday, the swell is stronger. The ship groans as she cuts through green-gray waves. Your stomach rebels like a janissary on payday. You lean over the side just in time to offer your breakfast to the sea. A passing sailor pats your back and offers a lump of candied ginger. "Good luck," he says. "You'll need it." Few survive the first crossing without reconsidering life decisions. A historical note: Ottoman merchant ships like Al Rihla weren't small. Some galleons stretched nearly 80 feet and carried dozens of men, plus cargo, plus animals. Everything from goats to parrots to the occasional war elephant. And yet, they still felt cramped. You take in your surroundings: coiled ropes, creaking wood, and the endless drone of the sea. The rhythm is hypnotic, almost musical. You begin to suspect you'll start dreaming in waves. Now, for a quirky bit, one superstition says that carving a squid onto the prow protects the ship from jealous sea spirits. You don't believe it until you notice someone sneakily chiseling one at dusk. Even the rays doesn't stop him. As the sun dips low, the sky turns apricot and blood. You're exhausted, salt-crusted, and exhilarated. And even though your feet hurt and your shirt's soaked in sweat, a small, stubborn part of you is thrilled to be here. Historians still argue whether Ottoman merchant ships ran strictly by schedule or followed a more improvisational, when the winds allow, rhythm. But based on the way Al Rihla zigzags around invisible obstacles, while the crew argue over the direction of the current, you're leaning toward improvisation. The coastline has vanished. Only sea, sky, and sail remain. You are no longer a land dweller. You are crew now. You descend into the ship's underbelly with a heavy sigh and heavier limbs. After hours of coiling rope and learning that swabbing the deck is somehow both literal and metaphorical, you're told to go below and find a place to sleep. You picture something cozy, perhaps a modest hammock and a wooden bowl of stew waiting lovingly beside it. Oh, sweet summer optimist, the hold smells like damp wool, pickled fish, and secrets no one wants to revisit. You duck your head to avoid a hanging lantern, which flickers weakly as the ship rocks. It's not quite dark, but the air is dim, muggy, and suspiciously moist. There are rows of hammocks strung between beams, each one drooping with the sweaty imprint of another sailor's previous misery. A few are occupied, snoring shapes with sunburnt noses and stained tunics, swinging gently with the sway of the ship. You find an empty one, sort of. It has a mysterious puddle underneath it, and the canvas smells like fermented goat. You decide it's yours. Congratulations. You're home. The ceiling is low. You have to crouch to move, and there's a beam at forehead height that at least 3 people have already bashed into, judging by the chipped wood and faint trace of blood. A rat skitters by with a bit of dried fig in its mouth. He's doing better than you are. You drop your bundle beside the hammock and immediately regret loosening your sandals. The floor is sticky, not fresh honey sticky, more like fish sauce and dreams deferred sticky. Still, it's your space now. You lie back in the hammock, which promptly flips and dumps you onto the floor. Someone laughs. You roll over, covered in shame and possibly brine. Eventually, you manage to get in, and stay mostly horizontal. As you rock back and forth, you start to notice the sounds. Water sloshing against the hull, groans of shifting wood, a deep creak from the mast, like an old man stretching his back. Above you, feet thud along the deck, and then a sound closer. Beneath you, chewing, you peek over the edge of your hammock and spot two sailors hunched over a shared bowl of hardtack, those dreaded sea biscuits, famous for being edible only after a thorough soaking, smashing, and mental dissociation. You're invited to join, and you do, because your last meal was somewhere back in Izmir, and the only thing more nauseating than the smell in this hold is hunger. The biscuit cracks your tooth on the first bite. Historical note: hardtack, or ship's biscuit, was a staple of Ottoman maritime life. It lasted forever, mostly because it was too hard to eat quickly. Sailors softened it in brine, tea, or, yes, beer, if they had any. You suspect they also used it to patch holes in the ship. For protein, there's salted fish, the kind that still stares at you, even after death. A sailor named Kamal shares his portion, proudly declaring it slightly less maggoty than last week. You make a polite noise and try not to examine it too closely. Now for the quirky tidbit. Buried deep in the hold is a cage. Inside, a monkey. No one is quite sure who owns it or why it's here, but it wears a tiny red vest and seems to understand sarcasm. You wave at it. It throws a dried fig at you. You feel oddly honored. There's a barrel near the ladder marked for drinking only. A lie so transparent, even the monkey rolls its eyes. Water is rationed carefully, and sailors are encouraged to sip slowly and pretend it's wine. It isn't. It tastes faintly of copper and regret. Sleep? It happens eventually, but not comfortably. You drift in and out, waking to shouts, sudden jerks of the ship, and once the monkey doing a surprisingly accurate impression of the captain's voice. Historians still argue whether Ottoman ships offered structured rest hours, or if the sailors just collapsed when they could. Evidence suggests a sort of chaotic rotation, where sleep happened in snippets, and someone always had to be on deck, watching for storms, pirates, or the cook's latest experiment with pickled turnips. You wake up sore, sweaty, and twisted like a pretzel that's been dropped. Your neck has a cramp. Your back hums with pain, and your hammock has somehow developed a tilt that sends your legs numb. Still, you survived your first night below deck. Not everyone does. Some flee back to shore at the next port. Some mysteriously vanish during night watch. And some, like you, stubbornly decide that being here, filthy, bruised, and half starved, is better than whatever life you left behind. You're starting to feel like part of the crew. Before sunrise, the shouting starts. Up, up, all of you, unless you plan to be ballast. The voice slices through dreams like a scimitar through melon. You jolt upright in your hammock, promptly thump your forehead against the beam again, twice now, you're keeping score, and tumble onto the damp wood floor with the grace of a stunned octopus. On deck, the air is sharp with salt and brisk wind. The sky is still bruised with dawn, clouds streaked pink and iron gray. The sea rolls steadily beneath you. You stumble upward and blink at your surroundings. The sails are being adjusted, ropes heaved into new positions, and everyone seems to know what they're doing, except you. Enter the Rays, your captain. He stands near the rudder with one foot up on a crate, squinting into the morning wind like he can smell misbehavior on the breeze. His robes are simple but clean, cinched with a wide leather belt that holds a curved dagger and a short baton, a sign of his command. His beard is now braided, the end tied off with a tiny blue bead, a charm. Look sharp, he barks. Winds are shifting. Alexandria won't wait for us to finish our tea. You glance down at your cold tin mug of tea. You take one final sip, defiant, and get to work. The race is not cruel, but he's not your friend either. Orders come fast, clear, and sometimes in dialects you don't fully understand. But everyone obeys, quickly and without question. And so you follow suit, learning fast that pull the halyard means yank this rope with your entire being, and that reef the sails is not, as you guessed, something to do with seaweed. You also learn that the race has a secret, a tattoo. Late one evening, as the sun disappears and he shrugs off his outer robe, you catch a glimpse of ink across his shoulder blade, a lion, mid-roar, tangled with a serpent. Pirate Mark, whispers Kamal beside you. Ustamich the corsairs of Algiers. They say he once took a Portuguese galley with only 9 men and a goat. You raise an eyebrow. What was the goat for? Kamal grins. That's the part no one agrees on. Historical fact. Many Ottoman captains had checkered pasts. Some were former pirates, granted legitimacy by the Sultan. This delicate line between outlaw and official merchant was often just a matter of paperwork and who you bribed in port. But no one questions the raise. He has that quiet command that says, I've buried men, and I remember their names. When a young deckhand drops a crate of pepper and looks ready to cry, the race simply says, pick it up. This ship doesn't sail on tears. And it works. One morning, you're called to assist the captain directly. He stands with a map spread over a barrel, using a bone-handled knife as a pointer. The ink smudges where sea waters touched it. He asks your opinion. You stare at the map like it's written in runes, which, in your defense, it might as well be. But you squint, mumble something about currents near Cyprus, and wait for the boom of laughter. Instead, he nods. Not wrong. Your chest expands a little. Then he adds, but not right either, and walks away. One of the crew claps you on the back. That's as close to a compliment as he gives. There's a rhythm to his command. Orders are given quickly, efficiently, but always with the sense that he's weighing every decision 10 steps ahead. During one tense moment, when two sails start tearing in the wind, he barks instructions with such precision that the crew has them stitched and retied in under an hour. He trusts experience over noise. One crew member, Yusuf, tries to curry favor by loudly repeating orders before the Reis finishes speaking. By the second day, Yusuf is reassigned to latrine duty permanently, and yet the captain has a soft spot. Once, while everyone's distracted with repairs, you see him crouch beside the monkey's cage. He feeds it a dried apricot and whispers in a voice just above the creak of the mast. The monkey chirps once, reaches out, and touches his forehead gently. You pretend not to see. Quirky detail. The Reis swears by an ancient amulet he keeps looped on his dagger hilt, supposedly made of meteorite and blessed by a dervish in Konya. He never sails without it. Once, when it briefly goes missing, he halts the ship entirely, mid-current, until it's found. Spoiler, the monkey had taken it. Again. Historians still argue whether Ottoman captains were trained formally or rose through the ranks. Records are inconsistent, and many ships, especially those in contested waters, operated under a blend of imperial law and maritime improvisation. But your captain? He doesn't need a diploma. He commands with the authority of a man who's seen too many dawns and buried too many friends. And as you haul rope beside him, sweat mixing with salt, you begin to realize something unsettling. You'd follow him into a storm. You never imagined how many ways there are to mop a deck until now. By your 4th day at sea, you've developed new muscles, new calluses, and a deep, abiding resentment for barnacles. The daily routine on Al-Rihla is less grand maritime adventure and more chore list with waves. And you're firmly at the bottom of that pecking order. Today's job, swabbing the deck. Again, you slosh seawater from a bucket with a limp rag mop and try not to breathe too deeply. The sun beats down on your back like a blacksmith's hammer, and your neck is a shade of pink you're certain no human should turn. Around you, other deckhands scrub, hammer, and hoist, each task as thankless as the last. At least you've stopped throwing up. Progress. You've learned that everyone has a job, and no job is glamorous. Even the quartermaster, who you once assumed lived a life of scrolls and dignity, spends half his time yelling about missing crates of raisins and trying to keep the monkey from pooping on his ledgers. There's Ahmet, who sharpens tools and mutters to himself in rhyme. Fatima, the cook's assistant, who curses with shocking creativity in 5 languages. And Kamal, your bunkmate, who now insists you call him Captain Kamal whenever he carries 2 buckets at once. He even does the voice. Man the ropes, he cries dramatically as you pass, arms trembling under the weight. We're taking on stew. You help anyway, but there's a hierarchy, always. Those with seniority do less swabbing, more barking. The greenest sailors, like you, get the worst of it, cleaning latrines, untangling ropes, and once chasing a rogue chicken that had somehow gotten loose and declared war on the mainsail. Historical fact: Ottoman merchant crews weren't formally ranked like naval forces, but there was a clear structure based on experience, skill, and the ability to not accidentally set anything on fire. The reis was supreme, followed by the reis yardımcısı, first mate, then senior deckhands, apprentices, and finally the new blood, people like you, who were mostly referred to as "hey you" until proven useful. Even the animals have more respect. The ship's goat, for example, roams freely. She's named Sultana, and the crew insists she's older than the race. No one dares milk her. She once bit a man for looking at her sideways. Quirky tidbit: there's a game the crew plays called Sütlü Yılan, Milky Snake. It involves a coiled rope, a blindfold, and a very unfortunate raw egg. You lose frequently and now smell faintly of omelet. During calmer hours, you help patch sails, learning the rhythm of needle and thread through canvas thick enough to stop a blade. You fetch tar, haul crates, and on one memorable afternoon, hold the quartermaster steady by the ankles as he dangles into the cargo hold to retrieve a runaway spice sack. He smells like cinnamon for 3 days afterward. Your hands are cracked, your nails constantly blackened, and you've stopped trying to stay dry. Dry is a myth, like restful sleep or an honest tax collector in Tripoli. Still, the work brings strange comfort. There's a rhythm to it, a lull that settles over the ship when everyone is busy but no one is shouting. Sails flap gently. The sea hisses along the hull. You hum an old song under your breath as you scrub. Someone joins in, then another, and suddenly you're singing together, off-key and ridiculous, but together. Then, snap, a rope breaks, a crate shifts dangerously. Everyone yells. Back to chaos. Historians still argue whether these merchant crews were disciplined or disorganized. Some accounts describe flawless coordination. Others read like diaries of high-functioning anarchy at sea. Your experience? Probably the second one, with moments of surprising grace in between. You're starting to learn the faces and moods of the crew. Who to avoid before coffee? Fatima. Who always has extra dates to share? Ahmed. And who snores loudest? Tie between Kemal and the goat. You even find yourself taking pride in your work when the deck shines just right, when a sail is perfectly mended, when the crew stops calling you dead weight and starts calling you rope rat. It's progress. You may not be steering the ship, but you're helping keep it afloat, literally. One afternoon, as you plug a leak with what looks like an old slipper and some tar, you realize something strange. You're no longer counting the days. You've stopped thinking about where you came from. You only think about what comes next, and you realize, slowly, stubbornly, you've become a sailor. The moment you see the cargo being loaded, your eyebrows climb halfway up your sunburned forehead. It's not the crates of spices, those you expected, nor the bundles of dyed wool, or the amphorae sealed with wax. No, it's the goat-sized package wrapped in silk and complaining loudly in Arabic that surprises you. You glance at Kamal. He just shrugs. That's the merchant's nephew. Of course it is. Cargo on Al-Rihla isn't just goods. It's a sprawling, chaotic family of objects, animals, and human dignity folded tightly into jute sacks. You spend hours hauling everything aboard. Cinnamon sticks from Ceylon, blocks of beeswax, carpets from Anatolia, sacks of dates, barrels of fish sauce, and, most curiously, 2 crates labeled delicate, absolutely not haunted. You ask Fatima what's inside. She leans in conspiratorially. Old mirrors, probably Venetian, definitely cursed. You don't ask again. The cargo hold becomes your second, less pleasant home. You help the quartermaster catalog everything with a long scroll and a short temper. He reads off the items. You write down crude symbols and hope the ink doesn't smear before Alexandria. Historical fact: Ottoman merchant ships carried a vast variety of goods depending on the season, route, and demand. Common items included spices, textiles, dried fruit, olive oil, dyes, perfumes, glassware, and yes, occasionally enslaved individuals, though this varied depending on regional laws and shifting morality. The human cargo is the most awkward to discuss and the most quietly present. A young woman in fine robes boards under the pretense of being cargo protection. She carries a scimitar longer than her arm and a scowl that keeps even the monkey at bay. Another passenger, a rotund merchant with golden bangles, insists his parrot ride above deck only, or you will regret it. You believe him. That parrot has seen things. You spend part of each day checking the cargo straps. The ropes groan when the ship sways, and more than once you're nearly flattened by a shifting crate of saffron. Once, you step on a fig that's fallen from a torn sack. It squishes between your toes, and you briefly consider quitting the sea and becoming a fig farmer out of spite. Still, the hold is a museum of wonder. You crack open a crate marked with stars and moons and find dozens of tiny flasks, amber glass, each sealed with wax, each containing a different perfume: jasmine, musk, rose, ambergris. You take a whiff of one and nearly fall over from its intensity. Quirky tidbit: there's a jar labeled medicinal leeches, do not shake, stashed beside the pickled lemons. Someone has drawn a frowny face on it, with very good reason. At night, you dream of boxes. They creak and whisper in your sleep. Sometimes they move. One evening, the quartermaster shows you his ledger, not the official one, with neat Arabic script and proper stamps, but the real one, a mess of ink blots, corrections, and small doodles of what appear to be angry fish. Every crate tells a story, he says. This one? He points to a battered box. Smuggled tulip bulbs. Highly illegal. Very valuable. Tulips, you ask, skeptical. He nods gravely. In Istanbul, they'd kill for them. And he's not wrong. During the tulip era, a single exotic bulb could cost more than a horse or a politician. Historians still argue whether Ottoman merchant manifests were strictly enforced or more suggestive guidelines. Many captains kept two sets of records, one for port officials and one for, well, not port officials. It wasn't corruption, it was logistics. You quickly learn the delicate art of stowing cargo. Fragile on top, heavy on the keel, valuables near the captain's quarters, and cursed mirrors as far from your hammock as possible. One crate, a heavy, iron-banded box, rattles ominously when touched. No one knows what's inside. The race claims it's a contract from a former life. Kamal swears it's full of teeth. You pretend not to notice that it's staring at you. Still, despite the aches and the constant smell of nutmeg, you start to feel something strange. Respect. These goods aren't just trade items. They're the veins of an empire, flowing east to west, north to south. Each object represents a deal, a debt, a story. Even the goat has a trade value, though you'd argue it's mostly emotional at this point. And you're no longer just a swabber. You're part of the machine now. You don't just haul cargo, you understand it. You know which sacks are flour, which ones hide smuggled coral, and which ones the monkey will try to pee on. And that's power. You even catch the quartermaster smiling at you once. Briefly, it might have been gas, but still, the wind shifts. You feel it before you see it. Cooler, faster, tinged with salt, and something metallic, like a storm sharpening its claws. The sky, once brushed in warm pastels, now grows pale and heavy. Clouds stack along the horizon like rolled carpets, thick, gray, and ominously quiet. A sailor mutters something in Albanian. Another spits over the rail and rubs his earlobe twice, a gesture you've come to recognize as trouble's coming. Even Sultana the goat has stopped wandering and taken shelter beneath a tarp, which is deeply unsettling. The race appears on deck without a word. He scans the sky, then the sea, then the crew. One sharp nod. All hands prepare, he says. You don't ask what for. You already know. The storm hits faster than you expect, like it's been watching you, waiting for the moment you exhaled. Rain pelts the sails in thick sheets. Wind howls through the rigging with an almost human wail. The sea, so calm this morning, rears up in dark green towers, slamming the hull like a furious god. You're suddenly drenched, freezing, and very aware of how high the deck is above the ocean. Everything becomes noise, orders, thunder, flapping canvas, the crack of wood under strain. The ship groans like a wounded animal. You cling to the railing, heart in your throat, trying not to become one with the cargo. Kamal screams past you, hauling a rope thicker than your leg. Told you she doesn't like being looked at funny. Who? You shout back. The sky, of course. Historical fact. Ottoman ships traversing the eastern Mediterranean often face storms just like this, especially in the shoulder seasons. With limited forecasting, sailors relied on subtle signs: bird flight, wind scent, sky texture. A sudden silence before storm was a particularly bad omen. You're told to help secure the forward sail, which means you realize with horror, climbing the rigging. You glance up. The mast sways like a drunk on stilts. The sail is flapping like a wild animal trying to escape. You consider your life choices. Then you climb. Halfway up, the wind slaps you sideways. Rain blasts your face. The ropes are slick and twitch beneath your hands. But somehow, impossibly, you hold on. You loop the canvas, secure the tie, and scream something triumphant to the heavens. No one hears you, but you hear you. That counts. Below, the crew is working like a single frantic organism. Fatima, soaked to the bone, is throwing ballast sacks to the low side. The quartermaster is lashing down crates while shouting verses from the Quran. The monkey is nowhere to be seen. Wise. And the race? He's at the helm, cloaked and silent, steering into the waves with a calm that borders on smug. Quirky tidbit. It's said that seasoned sailors could smell lightning before it struck. Ozone, sweat, and burnt rope. One crew member insists he smells figs before a strike. You don't question it, especially not after lightning splits the sky and hits the water so close you can feel the heat. The ship takes a hard tilt. For one breathless second, you're sure you'll tip, but she rights herself, shuddering, proud and stubborn. You think of her name, Al-Rihla, The journey, she's living up to it. Historians still argue whether these ships were built for true oceanic resilience or simply good coastal luck. Ottoman galleons were sturdy, but storms like this were always a gamble. Many ships were lost just miles from safe harbor. You survive the worst of it. Somehow, the storm begins to fade, pulling back like a sullen child denied more sweets. The wind quiets, the rain softens. The clouds loosen their grip on the sky. The aftermath is eerie. Everything gleams. The deck is a mirror of puddles and fallen rigging. You're soaked, shivering, and stunned to be breathing. The race finally speaks. "Well," he says, shaking water from his beard, "she still floats." You all cheer, weakly but sincerely. You slump against a crate, arms trembling. Your fingernails are packed with tar and salt. Your knees ache, but your heart pounds with something new. Pride. You didn't fall. You didn't drown. You faced the sea and lived. A rainbow appears, faint and fleeting, over the eastern horizon. Fatima sees it and immediately throws a wet sandal at it. "Mocking us," she mutters. Later, you help bail water from the hold. A few crates are ruined, including, regrettably, the leech jar. You say a small prayer for whoever finds them next. The monkey reappears, wearing someone's hat, looking smug. You sit on a coil of rope, steam rising from your skin as the sun returns. Around you, the crew laughs, limps, and coughs through their recovery. One sailor sings a lullaby. Another snores where he sits. The sea, now calm, glitters innocently, as if nothing happened. But you remember. You'll always remember. Land ho. You hear the cry just before dawn, when the sky is a soft bruise and the sea looks like old pewter. You blink salt from your eyes, shuffle toward the bow with the others, and squint into the distance. There, faint, shimmering on the horizon, golden domes and the spiked shadows of minarets. Alexandria. The city rises like a mirage, each wave bringing it closer and sharper into view. You smell it before you hear it. Spices, baked bread, coal smoke, and the unmistakable musk of too many people in one place. The crew stirs with excitement and anxiety. The race paces. Fatima tries to straighten her scarf. The monkey attempts to barter a stolen ring for a boiled egg. Normal port behavior. As you approach the docks, you're greeted by the usual mess of shouting officials, scrambling porters, barking dogs, and men in robes waving scrolls in every direction like conductors' batons. Welcome to Alexandria, Ottoman jewel, Egyptian puzzle, and the reason the quartermaster's eye twitches twice per minute. You're quickly assigned to unloading duty. It's chaos in slow motion. Crates of saffron, bolts of silk, and those cursed Venetian mirrors, which you handle with gloved reverence and unblinking eye contact. There's paperwork, so much paperwork. Historical fact: Ottoman ports like Alexandria were heavily regulated. Incoming ships were met by dock inspectors, tax officials, and occasionally imperial spies, especially if the cargo included weapons, rare books, or suspiciously fragrant perfumes. Each item must be declared, weighed, sniffed, and approved. You witness a shouting match over a mislabeled spice sack that nearly escalates into a duel before it's revealed to be cumin, not contraband opium. Close call. Quirky tidbit: Alexandria's dock officials often chewed dried rose petals to mask the stench of the port. One inspector offers you a handful. You chew politely, trying not to gag, as your mouth becomes a floral battlefield. You're allowed brief shore leave, but only in shifts. You step into the city cautiously, as if it might bite. And honestly, it might. The streets pulse with color and motion. Men selling saffron water from copper urns. Women carrying pyramids of bread on their heads. Children darting through stalls like caffeinated cats. You pause at a vendor selling honeyed dates. He grins at your sweat-streaked face and says, "First time in Alexandria?" You nod. He hands you a date. On the house, you look like you've earned it. You thank him. It's the best thing you've tasted in weeks. But Alexandria isn't just sweetness. It's sharp edges in velvet. A man tries to sell you a knife hidden in a sandal. Another offers to trade your boots for an ancient scroll of forbidden knowledge. You decline, politely. Fatima returns with a new scarf and an odd smile. Kemal somehow wins a chicken in a card game and spends the rest of the day trying to convince Sultana it's a friend, not food. The chicken disagrees. Back aboard Al Rihla, deals are struck. Merchants come and go, haggling, nodding, spitting, and occasionally threatening to write to someone's cousin in Istanbul. The race handles it all with cool detachment, pausing only to check on that one iron-bound crate that still rattles when touched. You help load the return cargo. Copper trays, carved ivory, baskets of rock salt, pungent bricks of indigo dye. You don't ask what's in the locked chests. You've learned. Historians still argue whether these port exchanges were standardized or wildly improvised. Evidence suggests both, depending on who you bribed, what you carried, and whether the harbor master had eaten lunch. That night, anchored just beyond the breakwater, you lie on deck beneath a tapestry of stars. Alexandria glows behind you, a soft halo of lanterns and laughter. You hear the call to prayer echo over the water, haunting, beautiful, like the sea itself is singing. The crew falls silent. Even the monkey holds still. You find yourself humming along, not out of piety, but something close to it. Respect, maybe, or just awe. The race passes by and stops to look toward the city. "Too loud for me," he mutters. "But she's beautiful, isn't she?" You nod. And in that moment, between cargo and cosmos, you understand something deep in your bones. This is what the journey is about, not just storms or sweat or scrambled hammocks, but this, the arrival, the exchange, the glimpse of a world you didn't know was waiting. You notice it first in the corner of your eye, a tiny blue bead tied with string, swinging from the mast like a warning bell, too small to be heard. You ask Kamal what it is. He looks alarmed that you even asked. Nazar Bonchu, he says in a low voice. Evil eye bead. It watches the things that watch us. Superstition aboard Al Rihla is less a quirky sidebar and more an unofficial operating manual. Every crew member, from the race to the monkey, clings to their charms, rituals, and quiet fears like life preservers. You do, too, now. It's just easier that way. You're told to never whistle on deck. Something about summoning the wind too greedily and inviting the wrath of sea spirits. You ask if humming is allowed. The answer is only if you hum in tune. Bad humming offends the jinn. Right. Got it. Each morning, before the sails unfurl, Fatima flicks salt over the port side while muttering what sounds like a lullaby and a threat. One sailor insists on stepping onto the deck with his left foot first. Another never says, "Good luck," only, "May your anchor hold." You adopt that one immediately. You begin to notice how deeply belief weaves into daily routine. When the sea is calm for too long, the quartermaster marks the deck with chalk in the shape of a fish. When it's too windy, the raise ties knots into the rigging, 3 tight, 1 loose, to confuse malevolent gusts. Historical fact: sailors in the Ottoman Empire blended Islamic practice with regional folklore, resulting in a vibrant tapestry of superstition. Daily prayers were observed on board, but so were ancient rituals involving knots, chants, talismans, and symbolic drawings etched into the wood. There's a small shrine bolted discreetly near the stern, just a painted tile of Mecca, a copper bowl for incense, and a cracked oil lamp. It's never discussed, but someone always refreshes the rose water. Quirky tidbit: one sailor carries a dried chameleon in a pouch to keep nightmares from swimming out of the sea. He offers to sell you a matching one. You politely decline, but the monkey steals it anyway. Nightmares reportedly increase for 3 days. Despite the chaos of belief, there's also structure. The call to prayer rings out 5 times a day, even on the high seas. The crew pauses, briefly, reverently. Even during storms, even during meal prep, there's a moment of stillness where time folds and the sea listens. You're surprised to see the rays pray. He does it quietly, facing the bow with the sky behind him. There's a softness in him, then, that you rarely glimpse elsewhere. Once, during a lull, you ask him, "Do the spirits really control the sea?" He doesn't look at you, just squints at the horizon and says, It's not about control, it's about respect. The sea gives, the sea takes. You'd be a fool to pretend otherwise. Historians still argue whether these superstitions were genuine beliefs or just ways to make sailors feel like they had some say in the uncontrollable chaos of maritime life. But belief, sincere or not, is sticky. It holds the crew together. It explains the inexplicable, like the time the anchor chain snapped on a windless day, or the night the stars seemed to shift too quickly, and even the compass spun without reason. You begin to keep your own little rituals. 3 knocks on the mast before going below deck, tucking your lucky chicken bone under your sash, whispering easy seas to the waves when no one's listening. It feels silly, then necessary, then normal. One day, the monkey goes missing. Again, you help search. Eventually, you find it curled in the lap of the oldest sailor on board, Mustafa, the man with half an ear and no known first language. He's sitting cross-legged beside the mast, eyes closed, humming to himself as he rubs a stone bead against his thumb. The monkey's tail is looped through his belt. Neither of them speaks, but both look at peace. You sit beside them for a while, unsure why. You don't believe in curses, probably, but you definitely don't touch the cursed mirrors, ever. That night, you wake suddenly, not to a sound, but to a feeling. The ship is still, the sea silent. Above, the stars are absurdly bright. A clear path stretches overhead, constellations laid out like stepping stones across the sky. You feel very small, but not afraid, just watched in a good way. You bow your head, whisper a thank you to no one in particular, and go back to sleep with the rhythm of the waves murmuring in your ears. It's dinner time, technically. More accurately, it's the moment after sunset when everyone gathers around a few mismatched bowls and pretends not to judge the contents too hard. You squat beside a barrel with a chipped tin plate and a hopeful heart. The smells are mixed. Tonight's main course is lentil stew, or perhaps lentil paste, depending on how long it's been reheated. It's the color of old bricks and has the consistency of something that's already been chewed. Someone's added onions. Bold. You take a bite. It's not bad. If you close your eyes, hold your breath, and imagine very hard that you're dining in a sultan's palace. Fatima ladles portions with the grim authority of a judge. She's added a dried apricot to each bowl for flavor, though you suspect it's mostly to distract from the weevils. The weevils are subtle. You pretend they're just capers. That helps. The bread is a different story. Hard as marble, slightly damp in the center, and shaped like regret. It's hardtack again, your old enemy. You soften it by dipping it in stew, then gingerly nibble. Your molars make a noise like timber splitting under pressure. The monkey, wisely, is eating bananas. Historical fact: Ottoman sailors ate what kept well at sea: lentils, onions, salted fish, flatbread, dried fruit, sometimes rice or bulgur. Meats were rare unless cured. Olive oil, vinegar, and honey were prized. The food was functional, not fancy. Drinks, mostly water, or what passes for water after sloshing in a wooden barrel for 3 weeks. It has an earthy flavor, earthy like a bog. Occasionally, tea appears, a miracle brewed from crushed herbs and goodwill. Sometimes, the race allows a small ration of date wine on holy days or after storms. You learn to eat fast, not because the food is hot, but because the flies are faster. One sailor stirs his bowl with a dagger. The stew fights back, he mutters. He eats it anyway. So do you. There's a communal understanding during meals. No questions, no complaints. And if you get a piece of dried fig that isn't mostly stem, you keep that joy to yourself. Quirky tidbit. One sailor swears by garlic as both food and medicine. He wears a necklace of dried cloves and adds a fistful to everything. He hasn't had scurvy once. He also hasn't had a conversation closer than 10 paces in 3 years. You try to help Fatima in the galley once. She assigns you onion chopping duty. 3 onions in, you're weeping so violently, the monkey brings you a handkerchief, then steals your belt. You don't go back. Cooking at sea is an art form involving shifting flames, swaying pots, and ingredients of questionable ambition. Fatima makes it look easy. She once cooked lentils through a squall, with one hand bracing the pot and the other throwing curses at the thunder. The stew didn't spill. The thunder seemed cowed. Historians still argue whether food aboard Ottoman ships followed formal recipes or was made by feel. Based on your experience, it's mostly feel. And that feel is, what do we have left, and how fast can we hide the mold? Still, there are occasional treasures. One morning, the crew hauls up a net with a dozen silvery fish. The race declares a feast. Fatima grills them over a crate fire, seasoning with salt, lemon rind, and something she refuses to name. The result? Incredible. You forget your cracked fingernails and smell like smoke for days, but it's worth it. Another day, you find a surprise. A sticky square of something sweet tucked into your bowl. Halva, probably brought by the merchant's nephew, who still refuses to leave his silk-wrapped cushion or speak in anything but rhymed couplets. You wave in thanks. He blinks once, slowly, then returns to reciting poetry to the parrot. You begin to savor even the small meals. A date shared under moonlight, a chunk of bread soaked in stew and eaten while your feet dangle off the stern. A single almond passed around like a relic. The monkey steals it. Of course, eventually, you stop comparing ship food to land food. You stop waiting for roasted lamb or golden rice or soft bread. You make peace with pickled turnips, dried olives, and lentils that crunch for reasons unknown. You find pleasure in the warmth of the bowl, the flicker of oil lamps, the quiet hum of wind through the sails. Sometimes you even forget about the weevils. Almost. It begins as a dot, small, harmless, just a speck on the horizon as you coil rope on deck, humming a sea chanty with 3 invented verses. The sun is high, the wind cooperative, and the lentils haven't fought back in days. Things feel manageable. But then the dot grows, faster than it should. Kamal notices it too. He stops mid-sentence. He was halfway through a tale about a haunted olive jar and squints toward the water. His lips press into a thin line. Trouble, you ask? Unless it's a floating mosque coming to bless us, he says. Yes. The race doesn't need a telescope. One glance, and he's barking orders. All hands, arms ready, cargo netted. No panic, yet. There's no formal alarm, just a sudden surge of motion. Crew members scramble to their posts. Fatima grabs a bucket of stones. Yes, stones. You don't ask. The dot is now a sleek, dark shape, cutting across the waves like a knife through warm butter. It flies no flag. That's answer enough. Corsairs. Historical fact. The waters of the Mediterranean were crawling with corsairs in the 16th and 17th centuries. North African privateers, some sanctioned by empires, others operating more loosely. Ottoman ships were sometimes raiders themselves, but they were also frequent targets, especially if laden with saffron, indigo, and a crate of highly suspicious mirrors. You run to the weapon crates. Inside, scimitars, spears, a few crossbows, and one flintlock pistol wrapped in oilcloth like a holy relic. You grab a short blade. It feels heavier than it looks. Or maybe that's just the adrenaline. The race takes the helm. His voice is calm, focused. Hold steady, no swerving. Let them think we're armed better than we are. You're pretty sure you aren't armed well at all. As the Corsair ship nears, you can make out details. A red-painted hull, black sails, a figurehead shaped like a snarling jackal. Figures line the rail, shouting in Arabic, Berber, something else. Their weapons gleam. One of them moonwalks, just to show off. Rude. Then, just as you're bracing for impact, they veer off, skimming parallel, not closing in. They're sizing you up. Quirky tidbit. Some Corsair ships would shadow targets for hours, testing defenses, waiting for a weak moment. Others would shout poetry contests across the sea to buy time while reloading. Yusuf, the youngest sailor, yells something obscene in Greek. They answer with a wave. Friendly pirates, perhaps. The race raises a flag, striped in green and gold. the symbol of an Ottoman guild with very sharp lawyers. A bluff, but it works. The corsairs hesitate. Two men aboard Al-Rihla make an exaggerated show of oiling their weapons. Fatima throws a stone overboard for effect. They watch you. You watch them. The sea holds its breath. Historians still argue whether corsairs operated independently or with tacit imperial approval. Some were clearly rogue. Others had signed letters of marque, imperial permission to plunder enemies. The line was thin, often wet. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the corsairs turn away, cutting east toward richer prey or worse luck. Their sails fade into the haze. You sag against the mast, legs jelly. The crew exhales as one. That, Kamal mutters, is the closest I've come to praying and wetting myself at the same time. You chuckle, then check your sandals, just in case. Later, the race gathers the crew. We got lucky, he says. Luck doesn't last, so prepare better tomorrow. He walks off. No congratulations, just truth. You sleep uneasily that night, blade tucked beneath your hammock. You dream of red sails and jackal heads, but in the morning the sun returns. The monkey snores softly in a coil of rope. Sultana eats someone's scarf. The crew resumes swabbing and laughing and cursing at biscuits. The sea moves on as if nothing happened. But you remember, the line between merchant and target is thinner than canvas. And out here, on open water, respect is earned with sweat, steel, and the occasional bucket of stones. The call to prayer rises into the wind. It begins soft and solitary. Just one voice, clear and resonant, unfurling across the waves like a silk banner. Then another joins, and another. Soon, the entire deck is enveloped in its sound, a slow, echoing harmony that momentarily transforms the ship into something sacred. You pause where you're coiling rope. Everyone does. Even the monkey sits still, tail wrapped around its paws. The sun is low, just above the waterline, and casts long, golden shadows over the deck. Men turn eastward, unrolling prayer mats or kneeling directly on the planks. A sailor quietly washes his hands and face with water cupped from a bucket, murmuring blessings between splashes. The ship doesn't stop, of course. It never really stops, but it slows. The sails ease. The wind hushes. The rays prays without spectacle. He removes his sandals, adjusts his sash, and bows in perfect rhythm. No one speaks, not even Fatima, and she usually speaks through every meal, storm, and near-death experience. You watch, hands still dirty from the morning's rope work. You're not Muslim, but in this moment, you understand the need for ritual, for rhythm, for grounding in something larger than yourself. Historical fact: religion aboard Ottoman ships was as present as the sails themselves. 5 daily prayers were observed with consistency, timed by sun and stars, even in turbulent waters. Ablution was expected before each prayer, with seawater accepted when fresh water ran low. Even pirates prayed. That was the rule. Raiding could wait. God could not. Afterward, the deck comes back to life. Jokes resume. Spoons clink against metal bowls. A sailor drops a crate on his foot and curses so loudly the parrot learns a new word, normal. But the sense of reverence lingers, woven into the wood, carried by the breeze. Later, the race gathers the newer crew for a lesson on chain of command. You stand awkwardly at attention as he paces with a short baton tucked under one arm. A ship, he says, is not a democracy. It is a prayer, long, hard, and best performed together. You nod like you understand. You mostly do. He gestures to the mast. From there, he says, to the anchor, every hand must know its place, or we all go under. He points to you. You. What's your job? Coiling rope, sir? He smirks. Wrong. Your job is whatever keeps the ship afloat. If that means coiling rope, then fine. But tomorrow it may mean patching sails, or hauling anchor, or chasing the monkey off the tiller. Again, the monkey waves, unbothered. Rank aboard Al Rihla isn't marked by medals or uniforms. It's marked by trust, experience, and how many toes you've broken without whining. There's the race, then his yardımcısı, the first mate, a thin man who smiles only when the soup is especially bad. Then the usta deckhands, veterans who know the ropes like old songs, and the çıraklar, apprentices like you, still figuring out the difference between a halyard and a headache. Quirky tidbit. One rank not officially recognized, but universally understood. The Mereldanen, the mumbler. This is the sailor who never stops muttering prayers, insults, or conspiracy theories about fish. Every ship has one. Yours is Yusuf. He insists the stars are listening. You believe him on stormy nights. Discipline is strict, but rarely cruel. Mistakes are corrected fast, publicly. Once, a sailor forgets to secure a cargo net and nearly loses a crate of ivory combs overboard. The race makes him tie and untie the same knot for 2 hours until it's burned into his muscle memory. No shouting, just repetition. Discipline, the race says, is kindness paid forward. Historians still argue whether merchant crews adhered to formal naval codes or followed ship-by-ship customs. Some records show detailed rules. Others are nothing but word-of-mouth traditions passed through generations of sailors and smugglers alike. By your 3rd week, you can climb the rigging half asleep, predict the weather by sniffing the sails, and throw a rope with reasonable precision. You've earned nods from senior crew. Even the first mate mutters, "Not useless," as he passes. That's practically a promotion. At night, beneath lantern light, You help write inventory logs in Arabic script. Your letters clumsy but improving. The quartermaster corrects you once, then lets you finish. He trusts you a little. You may not have a title, but you have a place on a ship. That's everything. It starts with a fig, a very squashed fig, to be precise, oozing onto a scroll that's definitely not waterproof and definitely belongs to the quartermaster. You spot the mess just as the ink begins to smear into a vaguely obscene shape. There's a brief moment of panic, then yelling, lots of yelling. The quartermaster storms in like a thundercloud with paperwork, waving what remains of the manifest like a wet flag. Who left fruit near the cargo ledgers? Who? He bellows, voice cracking like a whip. No one answers, except the monkey, who shrugs and hands him a second fig. Order on this ship doesn't come from weapons. It comes from ledgers. You discover that quickly as the quartermaster brings you in to help repair the damage. His hands are permanently ink-stained, his robe spotted with wax and panic. He treats his logbook the way the race treats the ship, as something sacred, something temperamental, something that might kill him in his sleep. He points at the ruined page. That was our copy of what left Alexandria. If the numbers don't match what we offload in Tripoli, I'm going to have to explain why 3 bolts of silk are unaccounted for. And I am very bad at lying to customs officials. You blink. Can't we just guess? He looks at you like you've proposed marriage to the goat. You don't guess at commerce, he says. You divine. And so you learn the art of the merchant's ledger. Historical fact. Ottoman ships were required to keep detailed records of all cargo, not only for taxation but to avoid accusations of smuggling or theft. These records often included quantities, sources, buyers, and sometimes the weight of the ship itself before and after loading. You sit with the quartermaster in a stuffy corner below deck, surrounded by crates that smell like cloves and wet feathers. He reads off numbers. You tally. He curses. You erase. It's a dance. He explains. Every fig, every spool of thread, every peppercorn has value. If it's missing, someone notices. If it's extra, someone really notices. You nod, now terrified of pepper. Quirky tidbit? To check for smuggling, port inspectors would stab crates with thin spears, hoping to feel hidden compartments. Some smugglers got clever, packing goods in barrels of pickled fish or carving cavities into actual figs. One legend tells of a crate labeled buttons that turned out to be stuffed with rubies. No buttons. Your job becomes decoding the logic of trade. Crate 44B contains saffron, measured in dirhams, not okas, because it's potent enough to trigger a riot. Crate 51, labeled olive soap, but smells suspiciously like sandalwood perfume. You log it as miscellaneous aromatic solid. The quartermaster nods in approval. Some entries are scratched out and rewritten multiple times. Ports change mid-voyage. Deals shift. One cargo item, initially declared as ceramic plates, becomes unglazed terracotta after a sudden storm smashes half of them. You learn to speak in margins and ink blots. There's even a code book full of shorthand symbols and tiny drawings. A sunburst means luxury. A coiled snake, risky. A goat hoof print, don't ask. One afternoon, the Ray stops by. He flips through the book silently, eyes scanning fast. Then he looks at you. You're helping now? You nod. Learning. He grunts, almost approving. Good. Numbers remember better than men. Historians still argue whether these ledgers served more as legal proof or memory aids. On Al-Rihla, they're both, and also, sometimes, confessionals. The quartermaster has one page titled Unexplained, which includes a dead squid, 3 gold coins, and a single shoe. You add a line, Fig incident, suspect primate. He lets it stand. In time, you begin to understand trade routes not just as places, but as relationships. Alexandria doesn't just export spices, it sends rumors. Tripoli brings iron and poetry. Smyrna trades in dye and vengeance. The ledger reflects this web, page after page of movement, exchange, and fragile trust. And you become part of that rhythm. You can now recite the weight of the camel leather crate. You know which merchant writes in purple ink. You've learned to dodge the monkey before it flings dried dates. You even start to think in ledgers, calculating meals in rationed beans, sunsets in days to port, friendships in favors exchanged over scribbled margins. The quartermaster hands you a fresh page, blank, yours to start. Write carefully, he says. The ship remembers. You do. By now, you've learned to expect the unexpected. But nothing prepares you for Alaya. She boards in the port of Sidon, wrapped in a robe of deep indigo, face partially veiled, eyes sharper than the race's scimitar. The crew goes quiet as she steps on deck, not out of awe, but uncertainty. Women rarely travel on Ottoman merchant ships, and when they do, everyone suddenly remembers their manners, or pretends to. She carries no visible baggage, but her presence is weight enough. The race greets her with a nod, not his usual bark, not his formal merchant bow. A nod, respect without performance. She nods back. You lean toward Kamal and whisper, "Who is she?" He grins without taking his eyes off her. Depends who you ask. Some say a princess in disguise. Some say a spy. One man insists she's a witch who sings storms into jars. Which one do you believe? He shrugs. All of them. I value my limbs. She takes a corner of the upper deck near the tiller, unrolls a silk mat, and sits as if the sea had invited her personally. No one assigns her a hammock. No one dares. Over the next few days, Alaya becomes a presence you can't ignore. She eats little, speaks less, but somehow knows when a storm's coming, half a day before the sky hints at it. She offers Fatima a bundle of herbs that immediately improves the lentil stew, a feat worthy of sainthood. She sharpens her own dagger. Yes, she has one, and you once catch her murmuring to the monkey in a language you've never heard. The monkey nods solemnly. Historical fact. While rare, women did travel aboard Ottoman merchant ships, often noblewomen relocating, widows overseeing trade, or couriers carrying sensitive information. Their presence disrupted the usual rhythms, but also brought unique layers of negotiation, protection, and, occasionally, subversion. One night, you're on watch duty when she joins you. She doesn't speak for a long time, just watches the sea, her veil fluttering slightly in the breeze. "You count stars?" she finally asks. You glance at her. "Sometimes." "Good. They don't lie, even when men do." You're not sure what to say, so you nod and pretend you're the kind of person who talks to stars regularly. She glances at your belt. "Why the chicken bone?" You fumble. "Luck." She smirks. "Chicken died. Luck didn't help much." "Fair point." Quirky tidbit. Sailors had all sorts of theories about women aboard ships. Some claimed they brought bad luck. Others said they calmed the sea. One tradition held that a woman could only travel safely if she wore a silver pin over her heart. Alaya wears 3, carved with tiny runes. No one asks why. You once see her alone, hands raised, chanting softly. She faces not Mecca, but due west, into the sun. When asked later if she's praying, she says only, "I speak to what listens." You don't press further. The race speaks with her twice a day, quietly. No one overhears. Once, you see her hand him a scroll wrapped in waxed cloth. He nods, tucks it inside his robe, and doesn't speak to anyone else until nightfall. The crew treats her like a thundercloud wrapped in silk, beautiful, distant, possibly deadly. But when a young sailor cuts his hand badly on a rusted hook, it's Alaya who tends the wound. Her touch is quick, firm. The bleeding stops in moments. She says something soft, and the boy stops shaking. You start to see her not as a disruption, but as part of the ship's strange ecosystem, like the wind or the stars, or that one rope that always comes undone, no matter how tightly it's tied. Historians still argue whether women aboard these vessels held true power or were tolerated exceptions. There's little documentation, and much of it reads like gossip. But living it, you know better. Alaya holds a different kind of command. Quiet, piercing, unforgettable. One evening, you pass her as she watches the horizon. You always watch the same direction, you say. She nods. It's not the land I'm watching for. It's what follows us. You glance back. Only sea, only sky, only a faint chill that doesn't belong to the wind. You don't sleep well that night, but the ship sails smoother with her aboard. The rays seem sharper. The monkey better behaved. Even the goat stops chewing the rigging for a full day. Alaya never stays below deck, never complains about the food, never misses a sunset. She just watches, waits, listens. And you, who thought you knew the rhythm of the ship, realize you've only just begun to understand what floats beside you. The first time someone coughs blood, no one says anything. It's a dry sound, muffled into a sleeve, quickly wiped away. Just sea air, someone says. Happens to everyone, but it doesn't stop. It spreads, quietly, like mold in the corners of the hold. A groan here, a sneeze there. Then two men, too weak to hoist sail. Then Fatima's hand, trembling as she stirs the stew. You begin to worry. The Reis doesn't call a meeting. He doesn't have to. The crew knows. Everyone starts moving slower, speaking less. The monkey, usually irreverent to the point of insult, sits still for hours. Even the goat seems subdued, chewing with grim resignation. The barber becomes the busiest man aboard. Historical fact: Ottoman ships had a barber surgeon whose duties included shaving, leeching, wound cleaning, tooth pulling, and administering whatever potions or prayers he happened to believe in. Most had no formal training. Some used medical texts written centuries earlier. Others relied on passed-down folk remedies and a strong stomach. Your ship's barber is named Hussein. He's missing 2 fingers, 1 eyebrow, and claims to have been struck by lightning twice. His favorite tools include garlic, honey, vinegar, and a small bronze cup filled with ash. He doesn't explain what the ash is. You decide not to ask. When your turn comes, after a night of fever dreams and the unmistakable copper taste in your throat, he sits you on a crate, grunts once, and shoves a clove of garlic between your teeth. Don't bite, he warns. It'll insult the spirits. He then smears something cold on your chest, mutters a prayer involving goats and the prophet's cousin, and slaps your face hard enough to make your ears ring. You'll live, he declares, unless you don't. Comforting. Quirky tidbit. One sailor insists that leeches placed correctly on the soles of the feet will suck out bad dreams. He's covered in tiny red marks and hasn't slept in 3 days. You start noticing the quiet absences. One sailor doesn't come to roll call. Another's hammock hangs empty at dawn. There are no burials at sea, just silent farewells, and a weighted sheet lowered overboard before first light. The crew murmurs verses from the Quran, then goes back to their duties with hollow eyes. Alaya, ever present, moves among the sick with a bundle of herbs, and a vial of something that smells like scorched mint. She says little, just watches, measures, feels pulses. Once, you see her whisper into a sailor's ear just before he slips away. His expression softens, like he's remembered something good. The race begins sleeping less. He leans over maps, looking for ports nearby, places to resupply, rest, maybe leave behind those too weak to continue. But options are limited. The winds are shifting again. The sea offers no favors. Historians still argue whether Ottoman ships carried standard medical supplies or relied entirely on local remedies. What's clear is that knowledge passed from ship to ship, sailor to sailor, in an oral tradition born of desperation and improvisation. It wasn't science, but sometimes it worked. Hussein keeps a pouch of leeches near the galley. They get loose one afternoon. The monkey finds them first. What happens next is no one's favorite memory. Through it all, you do your best, hauling water, fetching herbs, whispering encouragement you don't entirely believe. You lose weight, your bones ache, but you stay upright. Then one day, the fever breaks. Not just yours, everyone's. Like a tide receding, the color returns to Fatima's cheeks. The quartermaster stops muttering sums under his breath and starts yelling again. Even the monkey attempts a somersault, though it ends poorly. You're not out of danger, but you're afloat. The race calls it the thinning, as if the ship has shed a layer of shadow. He orders a full deck wash, stem to stern. Buckets fly. Soap is used. Fatima hangs scarves over the rigging to scare off what lingers. You help scrub, your arms weak but determined. That night, under a moon sharp as a blade, the crew gathers for a quiet meal. No jokes, no toasts, just shared bread, shared breath, shared relief. And Alaya, silent at the rail, whispering something you almost recognize, a prayer maybe, or a goodbye. You don't ask. Some things are meant to drift away with the tide. The stars are back. You hadn't realized how much you'd missed them. How much darker the sky had seemed when you were feverish and half delirious below deck. But tonight, it's alive, above you, constellations like pinpricks in silk, the Milky Way smeared like frost across black velvet. The sea mirrors it all, a second sky rippling softly beneath the ship. You're in the crow's nest. It took a week of cautious nods from the rays and a well-placed bribe, 2 pickled figs and a compliment to the quartermaster's handwriting. But you were finally given night watch duty, alone, above. Just you, the wind, the stars, and a battered astrolabe the quartermaster insists still works if you squint hard enough. You press it against your palm, squinting as instructed. It's dented, tarnished, and definitely missing a screw. Still, you line it up with Polaris, take a slow breath, and try to remember what the race said. Find the star that doesn't move, Trust that one. Everything else is lying. Historical fact: Ottoman navigators used a mix of tools: astrolabes, star charts, compass bowls, and sheer instinct. Some had training in Ilm al-Falak, astronomy. Others relied on poetry and proverbs passed from older sailors. The stars weren't just points of light, they were road signs, timepieces, and silent companions. Below, the ship creaks gently. The sails catch a steady wind. The monkey, you assume, is asleep, though with him, asleep often just means plodding silently. You steady your legs as the mast sways. It's not fear you feel, it's clarity. You're higher than you've ever been at sea, cradled in a basket of wood and rope, suspended between water and cosmos. And it feels right. Kamal joins you on the next rotation. He climbs awkwardly, wheezing like an accordion, and plops beside you with a groan. Why anyone chooses to be this high off the deck is beyond me, he mutters. You see farther, you say. He glances at the sky. Yeah, and fall harder. You both sit quietly, watching Orion's belt slide toward the western rim. Kamal pulls out a wrinkled piece of parchment, a star chart, copied badly, annotated with doodles and dubious nicknames. That's not a planet, he says, pointing to Venus. That's just soup, he adds, gesturing toward a cluster near Gemini. Quirky tidbit: sailors often gave their own names to stars, while official Ottoman charts used Arabic celestial names like Altair, Betelgeuse, and Rigel. Crew-level lingo was far more colorful. One constellation was known simply as the donkey that ran because of its shape and the story of a sailor who swore he saw his escaped mule up there one night. He was not believed. You begin tracking time by moon phases and tides. Your handwriting improves as you log each star shift, each change in wind. You learn the feel of currents in your bones. You know when the ship veers 2 degrees off course before the compass confirms it. The race tests you. One night, he hands you a parchment with nothing but a question. Where are we? You mark a point using 2 stars and the length of your own shadow at dawn. He looks at it, grunts once, and walks away. The next day, you find an extra ration of dried apricots in your satchel. Coincidence? Definitely not. Historians still argue whether Ottoman navigators relied more on science or superstition. The truth, as always, is both. On Al-Rihla, the stars are sacred, but so is gut instinct. The chart tells you where you should be. Your gut tells you what the chart forgot. One night, you catch Alaya watching the stars, too. From the stern, veil drawn back, eyes glinting in starlight. You're reading them? You ask. She doesn't answer for a long time. Then, softly, I'm listening. You nod, because by now, you understand. The stars don't shout. They whisper, And if you're quiet long enough, if you steady your breath and silence your thoughts, they might just tell you something you didn't know you were missing. Later that night, you lie awake in your hammock, rocking gently with the sea. Your hands smell of rope and salt. Your mind drifts not to land, but sky. You trace constellations in your head like lullabies. And for the first time since boarding this floating maze of wood, sweat, and whispers, you don't feel lost. You feel aligned. Flags flap before you see the land. You're 2 days from Tripoli when the race orders a full sail adjustment and a fresh coat of black paint on the hull's nameplate. The crew groans. It's the hottest day in weeks, but no one argues. Not when border waters are near. As the sun rises behind you, a new flag appears atop the mainmast. White field, green crescent, gold seal. You don't recognize it. You weren't meant to. It's not yours. House flag, the race explains curtly. Merchant family in these waters, known for knives and contracts. We're borrowing their identity. Kamal snorts. We've now sailed under 5 names. We should start charging them rent. This is imperial water. Technically, still Ottoman territory. But in practice, it's a patchwork. Fiefdoms, governors, guilds, and ambitious cousins, each demanding their own toll, their own respect, their own interpretation of who's in charge today. Historical fact: the Ottoman Empire was vast, but not always unified. Merchant ships often crossed through areas controlled by different regional powers, governors, beylerbey, or semi-autonomous guilds. To survive, captains often borrowed affiliations or repainted ship names to avoid costly inspections, or piracy disguised as bureaucracy. The race calls a ship meeting. His voice is low, calm. If we're boarded, he says, we are the Shahzada's gift, owned by the Al-Qidr Consortium. Our manifest is honest, our bribes ready. No one speaks unless spoken to. No one mentions Alaya. Alaya is absent from the meeting. So is the monkey. This worries you more than it should. The quartermaster hands you a new ledger. Names altered, weights adjusted, contents redescribed in friendlier language. The mirrors are now religious ornaments, the dried scorpions, herbal preservatives. You ask, what if they open the crates? He sighs. Then we smile and offer them tea. You pass into port territory late in the day. A galley with scarlet sails drifts closer. Armed. No flag. Just a brass horn and very expressive eyebrows. The race raises a speaking cone. Peace and profit, he calls. Inspection, they shout back. Inspection fee accepted. He answers smoothly, tossing a small sealed pouch into a net they dangle over. The galley nods and sails away. No one even boards. You exhale. Quirky tidbit. It was not uncommon for inspections to be entirely ceremonial or transactional. A sealed pouch of coin spice, or even perfume was often enough to avoid delays. Some ships budgeted more for bribes than for food. They called it travel seasoning. Closer to Tripoli, the scrutiny tightens. You pass fortress watchtowers with cannon mouths like yawning lions. Flags flutter in every direction. You spot Tunisian colors, Mamluk remnants, a battered Venetian sigil someone forgot to take down. You change course 3 times in an hour, dodging patrols, avoiding known inspection zones, skirting past a reef that doesn't appear on your chart. The race navigates it all, like a man walking a crowded marketplace, blindfolded but whistling. Historians still argue whether this was chaotic or elegant. Ottoman maritime borders weren't always clearly drawn, intentionally. That ambiguity gave rise to a culture of adaptation, where ships became shapeshifters, and sailors were part diplomat, part illusionist. The monkey returns at sundown, wearing someone else's earring and carrying a pouch of dried tamarind. No one asks where he's been. The wind shifts again. The rays look skyward and nods. We ride straight, he says. No detours, no night sailing, no more names. Alaya appears on deck near midnight. She's changed her robe, donned new bangles, even shifted her walk. She looks like someone else now. Just another passenger. Just another shadow among shadows. You sit beside her briefly, both watching the dark outline of land drift along the horizon. You always this quiet? You ask. She doesn't look at you. Only when it matters. She fingers a small silver pin shaped like a falcon. You've never seen it before. You suspect it wasn't meant to be seen. Tripoli, you ask. She nods once. If the right people are there. And then she's gone again. The port lights come into view. You brace yourself. New city, new names, new lies. But the sea doesn't care. The sea remains the same, lapping softly against the hull, tugging gently at the anchor line, whispering that all things pass, even empires. Tripoli greets you with a smile full of teeth. The harbor unfolds like a market argument, crowded, colorful, and teetering between charm and menace. Terraced houses cling to the hills like they're gossiping over tea. Domes shine in the harsh morning light, and everywhere you look, flags, faces, noise. The smell hits first. Fish, spices, hot stone, and something vaguely burned, probably intentional, probably a delicacy. You disembark with a manifest in one hand and a head full of half-true identities. The docks are dense with movement, porters balancing baskets of cumin on their heads, traders shouting over goats, sailors trying to look confident while reading signs upside down. The race speaks to the harbor master, words exchanged like coins, a handshake, a muttered blessing, and just like that, you're officially a ship from somewhere else, carrying something else, authorized by someone who may not even exist. It works. You're cleared for port. Historical fact: Tripoli, under Ottoman rule, was a key hub in the empire's trade web, a melting pot of Arab, Berber, Turkish, and European influences. It functioned both as a bustling commercial center and a political chessboard where guilds, consuls, and governors jockeyed for power. And every merchant ship, yours included, had to navigate more than just customs fees. You're tasked with watching the cargo as it's unloaded. By now, you can smell which crates are suspicious without even opening them. You catch a pair of dock workers lifting the wrong bundle, spices marked for a very impatient Tripolitan widow, and redirect them just in time. The quartermaster sees this, says nothing, but later hands you an almond wrapped in date leather. That's practically a promotion. Inside the city, chaos dances with charm. The streets are too narrow, the shadows too long, the bargains too good to be safe. You follow Kamal to the Copper Bazaar, where everything shines and everyone smiles just a second too late. A man offers to trade you a jeweled dagger for your boots. Kamal talks him down to a bag of figs. You leave barefoot but armed. Quirky tidbit: Tripoli's port had its own internal currency, a blend of favors, tokens, and local scrip exchanged between ship captains, guild leaders, and port inspectors. Some of these tokens were literal, carved seashells or coins with intentional holes that could only be spent inside certain warehouses. At a tea house near the shoreline, you spot something strange: a faded painting hanging behind the counter. It shows a merchant ship in choppy waters, sails torn, a figure at the helm with one arm raised in defiance. The name on the hull, Al-Rihla. You call Kamal over. He stares at the painting for a long time. Is that us? He squints. Maybe, but the sails are wrong, and we've never had that many cannons, or that much fire. Still, the resemblance is uncanny. Legend already? You joke. Kamal grins. Takes less than you'd think. One good story told twice, and you're immortal. You make your way back to the docks as the sun lowers over the Mediterranean, everything soaked in tangerine and brass. Sailors finish securing the new cargo: olive oil, coral trinkets, indigo-dyed wool, and perform the usual rituals: tapping the mast, blessing the ropes, bribing the local cat for good fortune. It works. The cat gifts them half a lizard in return. The Reis inspects the manifest in silence. He nods once, nothing more. You suspect that's as close to good job as you're getting today. That night, the crew takes turns visiting the city's hammams, the famed bathhouses Tripoli is known for. After weeks at sea, the thought of hot water and someone else scrubbing your back is enough to make you emotional. You spend an hour sweating out everything you didn't know was in you. The steam is thick, the silence complete, except for the distant sound of someone snoring in the next room and the occasional splash of water against stone. You emerge wrinkled, reborn, and smelling of lavender and triumph. The race, of course, skips the bathhouse. I don't pay people to tell me I'm dirty, he mutters. But even he seems less sharp-edged that night. Historians still argue whether Ottoman merchant crews maintained hygiene standards higher than their European counterparts. While not universal, many did rely on port bathhouses and strict shipboard cleaning routines, often tied to religious purity laws and good old-fashioned pride. Before dawn, you're back aboard. Tripoli glows faintly behind you as Al Rihla creaks back to life. A fresh breeze flutters the sails. The stars return, softer now, as if softened by steam and salt and whispered tales. You take one last look at the port. You don't wave, but you think about it. Somewhere in that city, a painting of your ship hangs over a pot of mint tea. Somewhere, someone is already telling your story. And maybe, just maybe, they're making it better. The monsoon wind doesn't ask permission. It rolls in heavy and sudden, like the sea has changed its mind about being gentle. The sails strain before the order is even given. Ropes snap to life. The horizon darkens with speed. The race appears with his cloak already fastened, barking instructions as if the wind itself were a stubborn mule in need of scolding. Full rig, drop ballast, secure every crate with a name. You scramble with the others, hands blistered again, knees braced against the ship's tilt. The wind hums through the rigging like a warning bell. You've entered the monsoon zone. Historical fact: Ottoman merchant ships that ventured east, past Aden and into the Arabian Sea, relied on seasonal rüzgarlar, the monsoon winds. These were predictable but fierce, offering ships a narrow window to reach Gujarat, Hormuz, or further still toward Ceylon and beyond. Mistime it, and you drift or die. The race has been planning this. You realize that now. The sudden rerouting, the fresh cargo from Tripoli, the barrel of saltpeter you weren't supposed to notice. This wasn't just another hop down the Levantine coast. This was a pivot east, farther than you've ever dreamed. The wind is hot, wet, and relentless. It peels back every assumption you had about sailing. The ship tilts more deeply now, not just rocking, but leaning like a horse in full gallop. The deck becomes a battlefield of barrels, flying tools, and one surprisingly fast chicken. Fatima ties everything down in knots you've never seen before. The quartermaster clutches two manifests at once, muttering to himself like a priest late to prayer. The monkey climbs into the crow's nest and stays there, swaying gently, possibly meditating. Alaya doesn't flinch. She stands near the helm, veil pressed against her cheek, watching the east like she's been waiting for this moment longer than anyone on board. You overhear Kamal. I thought we were heading home. The race answers without turning. We are. Just the long way. You're too far in now to protest. There's something exhilarating about it. The speed, the force, the sense that you're no longer passengers of the sea, but participants in its will. The sails billow with strength you can't comprehend. The mast whistles. The rudder groans like it knows something you don't. Then comes the rain. It doesn't fall. It attacks, sideways, slapping against your cheeks, soaking you to the marrow in seconds. Visibility drops to a blur of white and gray. Orders become gestures. Your ears ring with the pressure. But the ship holds. She howls. She stumbles. But she holds. Quirky tidbit. To harness the monsoon, some Ottoman captains used floating birds as indicators. If gulls circled low and screamed without cause, it was believed a tailwind was coming. One sailor swears he can smell monsoon winds. Another claims his left elbow itches. That sailor is now tied to a barrel for his own safety. You sleep in short bursts, if at all. The hammock rocks like it's trying to throw you to India. Your dreams are full of blue and wind and stars turning in the wrong direction. The race runs on dates, bitter coffee, and rage. You see him nap once, propped upright, dagger in hand, eyes closed, but clearly threatening to reopen. Historians still argue whether Ottoman ships had full knowledge of Indian Ocean navigation or borrowed heavily from Arab, Persian, and Malay traditions. The truth, no one owns the sea. Every sailor learns from every other. What matters is the survival, not the credit. You make it through the third day, soaked, exhausted, and wired with a new kind of energy, one you can't explain, like the wind has grafted part of itself into your bones. Then, suddenly, it breaks. Just before dawn, the wind softens. The rain dies. The sea flattens like a bedsheet pulled tight. Clouds disperse like smoke, chased off by sunlight. You emerge onto the deck blinking, breath steaming in the cooling air. All around you, silence. Not the silence of stillness, but of awe. You've crossed something, a threshold, a border, a myth. The race turns eastward, hands on the rail. We ride the Indian tail now, he says quietly. Let's see if she likes us. You don't cheer. You don't speak. You just stare into the light and wonder what kind of world waits beyond the salt line. You don't recognize the port, not at first. It's not the sight of palm-thatched roofs or the clusters of boats stitched together with rope and paint. It's the smell that hits you. Cardamom, smoke, dried fish, and, somehow, molasses. Then the sound. Bells, birds, drums, and a language that curves through the air like dancing flame. You've arrived in Gujarat, not the city proper, one of the outer inlets, a sleepy crescent of docks used by cautious traders and ships that don't always want to be seen. Perfect for al-Rihla. You lean over the rail, blinking salt from your lashes. The journey east has etched itself into your joints. Your legs still sway even when the ship is still, but there's no mistaking it now. You've made it. Historical fact: the western coast of India. India was an essential destination for Ottoman merchants, especially in the 16th century. Ports like Surat and Kambat were rich in textiles, indigo, spices, gemstones, and horses. The empire's appetite for Indian goods was insatiable and reciprocal. The race orders a soft anchor, not fully deployed, just deep enough to keep from drifting. "We won't stay long," he mutters. "Trade, then go." These waters shift with the tide and the politics. You're sent to assist with unloading. The air is thicker here, humid, but filled with life. Vendors line the docks, selling tamarind paste and coconut water in clay cups. Children run barefoot between barrels. A parrot lands on your shoulder, says, "You smell like goat," and flies off. Accurate. You meet the vakil, a representative of a merchant house in town. He arrives dressed in white cotton, every movement graceful, voice smooth as carved sandalwood. The race greets him like a familiar rival. They exchange 10 words and a long silence. That's apparently enough. The quartermaster unloads the saffron and silk. The spices are triple checked, weighed, and sniffed. One crate is carried away under guard. You suspect it's the one that rattles when no one touches it. You ask what's coming on the ship. "Textiles," the quartermaster says, "and dye cakes, indigo, worth more than gold if you know where to sell it." You help stack the blue-dusted bricks with care. They stain your fingers. One drop of sweat turns your sleeve violet. Quirky tidbit: indigo dye was so valuable it was sometimes kept under lock and key. Sailors swore it could be traded for horses, camels, or a new set of teeth, though whether that was metaphor or poor dental hygiene is still debated. Kamal vanishes into town and returns with a silver earring, a henned handprint on his cheek, and no memory of the previous 6 hours. Fatima trades half a jar of fig jam for a new cooking pot. The monkey acquires a mango and refuses to share. Alaya remains on board, watching, waiting. You join her at sunset, where the light turns the water to glass and the sky to molten saffron. "You're not going ashore?" you ask. She shakes her head. "I've been here before, and there's nothing I need now." She looks toward the hills behind the port. You see something in her eyes then, something like ache, or maybe memory. You don't ask. The race returns just before nightfall, nods once, and gives the signal. You set sail under moonlight, the Indian coast slipping away behind you like a page turned too soon. Historians still argue whether Ottoman ventures this far east were coordinated or opportunistic. Some captains followed strict trade routes. Others followed rumors, wind, and the scent of profit. Al-Rihla seems to do all three. Back on the open sea, the cargo is secured, the ropes tightened, the monkey asleep atop the indigo pile. You sit against the mast, legs aching, heart full. You've crossed the empire. You've left behind the ports you knew. You've become someone the person who boarded in Izmir would barely recognize. And in 2 days' time, you'll be homeward bound. The water is familiar again, not gentle, not forgiving, but known. You recognize the way it shifts beneath the keel, the way the wind cuts across the deck like an old friend with sharp elbows. The Aegean, the sea that first tried to drown you and has since taught you to breathe differently. You're returning home. You rise with the sun, not because you have to, but because your body no longer knows how to sleep past dawn. The air smells of brine and distant pine. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies Izmir, or perhaps just the memory of it. You're not sure which. The ship feels different, lighter in some ways, worn in others. The sails are patched in 3 new places. The monkey has developed a taste for pickled garlic. One of the crew has a limp that won't go away. Fatima hums lullabies now when she cooks, songs you don't understand, but that pull at your ribs anyway. You catch yourself staring at the coastline when it appears, sharp and jagged, baked in sunlight. The colors are less vivid than in Gujarat, less lush than Alexandria, but they hold something else, something deeper. You realize you missed it. You didn't expect to. Alaya disembarks quietly at a smaller port down the coast, long before you reach your home harbor. No farewell, no final wisdom, just a faint smile as she steps onto the dock, her figure swallowed by morning fog. She leaves behind a single silver bangle looped over the tiller post. You touch it once before it disappears into someone's pocket. Maybe the race, maybe the ship. You ask Kamal what he'll do with his share of the profits. He says he wants boots that match, and a new coin purse, and maybe, just maybe, a cat. The race says nothing of home. He just stands at the helm like always, face unreadable, gaze fixed forward, even as the port draws near. The monkey, sensing land, climbs onto your shoulder. He smells like onions and adventure. The dock comes into view, busier than you remember, but smaller too. You see figures waving, barrels stacked, a vendor you once knew still selling sesame bread, now with more gray in his beard. You remember the exact spot where you first boarded. You remember how your feet slipped on the planks, how your gut clenched, how your world began. You step off Al-Rihla with legs that know the sway of water. You feel taller somehow, stronger. You know things now about wind, about stars, about people who lie for the right reasons. The quartermaster gives you one final job. Sign your name in the log. You hesitate. Then, For the first time in weeks, you write it without trembling. Historians still argue whether merchant crews return from their voyages richer, wiser, or simply changed beyond repair. But as you walk through the marketplace, hearing voices that feel both familiar and distant, you know this much. You are not the same person who left, and you wouldn't want to be. The ray says you're free to go, but somehow you already know you'll be back. The sea keeps her promises, and now it's time to rest. The sails have been folded, the anchor lowered, the salt still clings to your skin, and the scent of cumin and tar lingers faintly in the folds of your memory. Your voyage across the Ottoman Sea is over, but its rhythm hasn't quite left you. Soften your breath now. Let it rise and fall like gentle swells under moonlight. You've seen monsoons and markets. Watch the stars turn above unfamiliar skies. Shared lentils with smugglers and secrets with strangers. You've stood beside legends, walked among whispers, slept above waters deeper than you knew. Let those memories fade into soft outlines. Let the lantern light dim behind your eyes. Let the sound of ropes creaking and gulls crying become just a hush, just a hum, just part of the dreaming. Feel the warmth of the deck beneath your back as it rocks ever so slightly. No storm, no noise, just the pulse of a ship that carried you farther than you imagined. Tomorrow, the harbor will be behind you again. Maybe in waking, maybe only in memory. But for now, this ship drifts gently in the space between history and sleep. You are home and changed, and for the first time in a long while, truly still. Sweet dreams, sailor.